Lydia Carter, a trailblazer in the corporate world, carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned every ounce of her success. A seasoned executive, she was accustomed to navigating boardrooms and striking deals that shaped industries. On this day, however, she was embarking on a journey of a different kind, one that would expose the depths of bias and redefine accountability in a world that often overlooked it. Skyview Airways Flight 8913 was bound for Los Angeles, a route Lydia had taken countless times before. Her schedule was packed with high-stakes meetings, but she approached it with the calm determination that had become her signature. As she stepped onto the plane, the commotion of the bustling airport seemed to fade away. She was dressed impeccably, her tailored navy blazer and sleek white dress a testament to her professionalism and unrelenting standards. Her natural curls framed her face, and her sharp, intelligent features radiated authority. Clutching her first-class boarding pass marked Seat 3A, Lydia entered the tranquil first-class cabin. The plush leather seats and faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee greeted her like an old friend. She nodded politely at the businessman furiously typing away on his laptop and exchanged a warm smile with a couple discussing their vacation plans. This wasn't just a seat for Lydia. It was a symbol of her relentless journey, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, and the milestones she had achieved as a Black woman in a field often dominated by others. Upon reaching her seat, Lydia stowed her premium leather bag in the overhead compartment with the practiced precision of someone who had done this many times before. She adjusted her blazer and sank into her seat by the window. With the hum of the air conditioning and the muted chatter of passengers in the background, Lydia turned her attention to her phone. Tomorrow's negotiation would be pivotal, involving influential investors who could take her latest project to new heights. But Lydia's moment of focus was interrupted when a figure emerged in the aisle. The head flight attendant, Meredith Hall, exuded an air of authority. Her uniform was immaculate, her blonde hair tightly wound into a bun that seemed as rigid as her demeanor. Meredith's sharp eyes scanned the cabin, pausing momentarily when they landed on Lydia. Lydia barely noticed the scrutiny as she remained engrossed in crafting an email. But Meredith's stare lingered, a flicker of something inscrutable crossing her face. It wasn't Lydia's tailored outfit or composed posture that caught her attention. Those were undeniable markers of a successful professional. Yet Meredith's expression tightened, as if questioning the legitimacy of Lydia's presence in first class. Clearing her throat, Meredith approached Lydia's seat. Her voice was smooth, but tinged with an edge of formality. "Excuse me, ma'am. May I see your boarding pass?" Lydia looked up, her calm expression shifting into one of mild surprise. It was an unusual request. Boarding passes were rarely checked once passengers were seated in first class. Still, Lydia knew better than to challenge authority unnecessarily. Maintaining her poise, she set her phone aside and handed over her boarding pass with a polite nod. Meredith scrutinized the pass longer than necessary, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Lydia Carter, Seat 3A, First Class," she read aloud, her tone tinged with disbelief. "This is for first class?" Lydia met Meredith's gaze steadily, her voice unwavering. "Yes, it is." For a moment, the tension between the two women was palpable. Passengers nearby exchanged curious glances, sensing the unusual nature of the interaction. Finally, Meredith handed the pass back with a curt nod, muttering a strained, "Thank you," before walking away. Lydia slipped the boarding pass back into her bag, her composed demeanor intact. But the matter wasn't over. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Meredith returned, this time accompanied by another flight attendant holding a tablet. "Miss Carter," Meredith began, her tone more assertive now, "there seems to be a mix-up with your seat assignment. I'll need you to move to the main cabin." Lydia's calm demeanor didn't waver, though a faint furrow appeared on her brow. "There's no mistake," she replied firmly. "I purchased this ticket weeks ago." Meredith's expression hardened. "Either you move or security will assist you," she hissed in a low voice. Without raising her voice or causing a scene, Lydia stood. Her movements were deliberate, her dignity intact. She retrieved her leather bag and followed Meredith to the economy section, her posture straight and her head held high. The other passengers watched in stunned silence, their gazes filled with confusion, sympathy, or quiet disapproval. Lydia settled into a cramped seat near the back of the plane, her grace undiminished. From her new seat, she opened her laptop and typed a brief but significant message to her assistant. Incident on Flight 8913. Proceed as discussed. Lydia Carter was not one to let such an incident pass unnoticed. The wheels of justice had already begun to turn, and the events that followed would shake Skyview Airways and the broader airline industry to its core. This wasn't just a story about a seating dispute. It was the start of a movement, a stand against prejudice, a demand for accountability, and a testament to the power of resilience and strategy. As Lydia Carter sat in the cramped economy seat, the air around her buzzed with silent tension. Fellow passengers whispered among themselves, casting furtive glances in her direction. Some exchanged expressions of disbelief, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure how to react. Lydia, however, remained composed. Her back was straight, her chin slightly lifted, and her eyes fixed ahead. Despite the indignity of the situation, she carried herself with the dignity of someone who knew her worth and the power she wielded. But Lydia was not one to leave injustice unanswered. From her seat, she began taking meticulous notes, recording the sequence of events and the details of the incident with the precision of a seasoned professional. Every detail was important: the time of the confrontation, the tone of the flight attendant's voice, the reactions of the other passengers. This was not merely an act of documentation. It was the foundation of a larger strategy, one that Lydia knew could turn a moment of humiliation into a catalyst for systemic change. Her phone buzzed quietly. It was a response from her assistant. Understood. Preparing initial reports. Lydia smiled faintly. Her team was already in motion, ensuring that the incident would not be swept under the rug. As the plane cruised through the sky, Lydia reflected on the significance of the moment. She was no stranger to challenges, having navigated a career filled with obstacles that many would find insurmountable. As a Black woman in the corporate world, she had faced countless instances of subtle and overt bias, but she had never allowed them to define her. This, however, was different. This was public, visible, undeniable. By the time the plane touched down in Los Angeles, Lydia's resolve had crystallized into a clear plan of action. She exited the aircraft with the same grace with which she had boarded, but now there was a steely determination in her eyes. The first step was to ensure the incident was brought to light. Lydia wasted no time in contacting her legal team, recounting every detail with the clarity and precision that had made her a formidable force in the boardroom. Within hours, the story began to take shape. An account of blatant discrimination and unprofessional conduct that would soon ripple across the media landscape. The next morning, Lydia's story was everywhere. Headlines on major news outlets blared with titles like "First-Class Prejudice," "Corporate Executive Reassigned to Economy Without Cause," and "Skyview Airways Faces Backlash Over Racial Bias Allegations." Social media exploded with discussions, hashtags like #JusticeForLydia and #Skyview Scandal trending worldwide. But Lydia didn't stop there. She understood the power of action and accountability. Partnering with influential civil rights organizations, she helped amplify the broader implications of her experience. This wasn't just about one flight or one airline. It was about a pervasive issue that extended far beyond the confines of Skyview Airways. At a press conference days later, Lydia stood before a sea of cameras and reporters. Dressed in a sharp black suit, her voice was calm but firm as she addressed the gathered crowd. "What happened on Flight 8913 was not an isolated incident," she began. "It was a symptom of a larger problem, a culture of unconscious bias and systemic inequities that persist in many industries, including aviation." Her words struck a chord, resonating with millions who had experienced or witnessed similar injustices. Lydia's story became a rallying cry for change, sparking widespread conversations about accountability, inclusivity, and the need for systemic reforms. Skyview Airways, caught in the storm of public outrage, scrambled to respond. The airline issued a formal apology, but it was too little, too late. Under mounting pressure, they launched an internal investigation, which only confirmed what Lydia and her supporters already knew. The incident was a result of deeply ingrained biases within their organization. The fallout was swift and severe. Senior executives at Skyview were forced to resign, and the airline announced a comprehensive overhaul of its training programs and policies. Mandatory bias awareness training was introduced for all employees, from ground staff to senior management. A diversity and inclusion task force was established to ensure that such incidents would not happen again. But the impact of Lydia's actions didn't stop at Skyview Airways. Her case set a precedent that reverberated across the entire airline industry. Other major carriers began reevaluating their policies, conducting internal audits, and implementing reforms to address systemic issues of bias and discrimination. Lydia's resilience and strategic approach had sparked a movement that was both unprecedented and unstoppable. Months later, Lydia sat in her office, overlooking the skyline of a city she had helped shape in more ways than one. On her desk was a framed newspaper clipping with the headline, "A Flight to Justice. How One Woman Changed an Industry." Below it was a photograph of Lydia standing outside the courthouse, her head held high, surrounded by supporters. She picked up the frame, her fingers tracing the edges as she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It wasn't just about vindication or accountability. It was about creating a legacy, a world where the next generation wouldn't have to fight the same battle she had faced. Lydia's story wasn't just a tale of resilience. It was a testament to the power of courage, strategy, and the unwavering belief that change is possible. And for every passenger who boarded a plane in the years to come, her impact would be felt, reminding them that one voice, when used fearlessly, could truly change the course of history.